Hi, my name is Dr. Shahrunizam Ahmad Zamzali. I'm an emergency physician and I'm also a first aid trainer from Clinic Family Graviditis. In this case, I'd like to share about a baby is choking. People always say that baby can choke easily. So how can we recognize that the baby is choking? There are a few signs that the baby shows when they are choking. So if we know and we can recognize these signs early, this is where we can provide help or intervene early, so we can help out the baby so that it will not progress to the worst part or to the dangerous part. So what would be the signs of baby choking? First thing, you have to suspect a baby is choking when a baby who was playing happily, very well, no cough, no flu, no fever, suddenly starts to cough. That is the first sign. The first sign is when a previously well child starts to cough. You have to suspect choking. Why is this child coughing when there is no fever, when there is no runny nose? Maybe the child is coughing because there is the foreign body inside the throat. And this is why the child coughs, because they are trying to expel the foreign body. Bear in mind, a bit of anatomy, the airways and the foot tube or the esophagus is closely related together. The airways is the tube that brings air from the nose and the mouth to the lungs, or we call it the trachea. Near to it would be the esophagus. Esophagus is the gullet or the food tube that brings food from the mouth to the stomach. Because of their proximity, because they are situated close together, sometimes food particles can go, instead of going to the food tube, goes into the airway. And if it's small, you start to cough. And sometimes when you're talking, when you are coughing, when you're talking, when you are eating, you start to cough. And this is because some of the small food particles makes their way by mistake. Instead of the food tube, they go into the airways. But if the food particle or the foreign body is too big, what it can do is it can occlude or it can block the airway completely. So in this case, it's called a obstruction, or we call it choking. Because the simple coughing, we do not call it choking, it's just normal cough. When the food particle is small, let's say a piece of rice or some water, you just cough and then it goes away. But when the food particle or the object is too big, it can lodge itself in the airway and it can block the airway, it can occlude the airway. It creates what we call a foreign body airway obstruction. And in this case, there is no oxygen supply to the lungs because of the occlusion. So first is we know how to recognize, meaning that suddenly a baby that coughs without in absence of any runny nose, any fever, highly suspicious of choking. The second is if this baby was eating or playing. Because suddenly when a baby was coughing when they are sleeping, usually it's just a cough. But if they were playing or they were eating before that and suddenly they cough, most likely they are coughing because something got into their airways. So be suspicious of this second sign. A baby who was previously playing or previously eating and suddenly starts to cough constantly. Okay, that is the background history. What do we see on the baby? First thing is, people always say the worst case scenario is the baby became unconscious. Before they became, when they choke and there's not enough oxygen going to the brain, they will become unconscious. So unconscious is the last stage. The previous to that is the lips becomes blue or the face becomes blue. That is the next stage before it progresses to the unconscious. So some of the parents, some of the people, the public, they say the lips are not blue yet. So it's okay. Do not wait until the lips become blue, because that would be the second to last stage. So the worst stage would be unconscious. The second, before that, it comes the bluish tinge of the lips or of the face. So do not wait for these two very bad signs to set in. What other signs would be if the baby can talk or if the baby can cry, they could not talk or they could not cry. Because sometimes baby pronounces words, pronounces sentence, gaga, baba, and then suddenly they cannot. They keep on coughing but cannot talk. They cannot cry and they cannot breathe. So these would be another signs. When the foreign object got stuck in the airway, it creates a smaller diameter, it creates a more turbulent flow, and this can create the additional sounds. So this is the next sign that we need to look out for. So what do we need to look out for to suspect that the child is coughing? First, from the history. If the baby or the child was suddenly playing without any runny nose and suddenly cough, suspect. If the child was eating or playing before that, you suspect the child is choking. And then what does the child shows? The child who's able to talk is unable to talk. The child who cannot cry. The child who cannot breathe. And the child who's making added sounds. And if these four things is not being addressed, the child can progress to have bluish tinge of the mouth and of the face. And this is called cyanosis, meaning not enough blood going to the brain. And if this is not being tackled, it can go on to make the victim or the child collapse and become unconscious. And if this unconscious is not being addressed, then the child can ultimately die. So these would be the signs that we need to look out for a choking baby.